Доброго дня, шановні пані та панове.
Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ukrainian Media Crisis Center. Everybody who watches us online or whatever else. So we're going to start our discussion, which is entitled "The History of the Prisoners' Voice: the 3 Steps Toward this New Opportunity." Good morning to everyone. We are going to start today our discussion. You know that over 100 Ukrainian political prisoners find themselves now in different prisons of Russian Federation, mostly in the Crimea. Again, the bigger number of those are the Crimean Tatars, and they are actually kept on inhuman conditions in the occupied Donbas area. All those people, they fell victim to the annexation, to the aggression, to the war, which we are living through, all of us. And we really have a very busy, let's say, agenda in Ukraine and the world over. We have the local, let's say, elections here in Ukraine, the presidential elections in the United States, and a lot of different very urgent topics being discussed by the public at large, different countries. And we should not forget about those who actually defend the freedom of Ukraine, those who actually spend their time in prisons, in jails, and they're politically persecuted by the Russian Federation authorities. We would like to talk today about those who actually have been imprisoned, those who actually came back, returned back to Ukraine, and what is being done for the rehabilitation and the return of those people. I'm talking about the Ukrainian government, the civil, let's say, society, and the figures of art, the scientists, technologists, more and more of those are now being involved in the resolution of social issues. But we would like to start with a short video which will show you one of those cultural initiatives. Histories of the Kremlin prisoners in the application of the supplemented or augmented reality prisoner's voice. Three steps for the Kremlin prisoners. Download this application and actually hear the story we are going to share with you, and then sign the petition. Become a volunteer, by joining and pooling our efforts, we'll be able to stop the aggression and all this misfortune. Actually, this is the augmented reality application, which can be downloaded in the Android platform. And later this prisoners in voice. This is one of the initiative to once again actually raise the issue of the political prisoners in Russian Federation among the Ukrainian society and the community, and what is most important abroad, so that our foreign partners do not forget about the problems we encounter in our way of our existence and the most urgent issues we have to resolve. My name is Andriy Kulakov. I represent I'm program director of the Internews-Ukraine. Actually, we do appreciate that they helped us to launch this prisoner's voice, and we would like to discuss that among the biggest possible number of people. By the way, today's our presentation discussion actually takes place like anything else which is being held today in some kind of hybrid standard. We have the speakers. Some of the speakers are here in those premises of the Ukrainian Media Crisis Center. Some representatives from Ukraine and from other countries are in online mode. Actually, we can have this kind of live discussion of physical offline discussion. And also we provide this stream online in several languages. You can actually follow our transmission and using the resources of the UCMC. Following the Facebook page Internews-Ukraine and the UCMC page. Also, you can follow us in English and on the platform, Facebook platform, the Ukraine World project. So we have the transmission into different languages. So not only the citizens of Ukraine can hear and understand us, but also our let's say the listeners in foreign countries. So I would like to introduce to you our participants online. We have Eduard Fisko, who is the representative of the MFA of Ukraine, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Eduard, welcome. Thank you for coming here and joining us here. We have Yulia Fediv, the Executive Director of the Ukrainian Cultural Fund, the foundation, which was our close partner recently, which she supports different various cultural initiatives, a part of which are associated with the cultural diplomacy, with the social problems resolution, of ways how to resolve those. We have Oleksandra Matviychuk here. She is the chairman of the board of the Center of Civil Freedoms and Liberties. This is one of the most active organizations in Ukraine which deals with the issues of, well, we are talking about the events in the Donbas area. She was dealing with the victims of Maidan and the victims of the Russian occupation. And now they deal with a lot of different, let's say, human rights protection projects, including the prisoners, political prisoners. Also, we are going to be joined by representatives of different organizations, the relatives of the political prisoners in the online mode. I'm going to talk about them a bit later. Now we have here Alim Aliyev, who is Deputy General Director of the Ukrainian Institute, and he is very active human rights defender, let's say, advocate, and he's an ambassador of the Crimean culture and also the Crimean political prisoners. We have Stanislav Aseev, Ukrainian journalist, who unfortunately had been taken prisoners in the past, and we are going to hear his story and the problems the Ukrainian political prisoners encounter. And also we are going to have later some other people online, and I'm going to present their, to give their names a bit later. We are going to have a very busy schedule. Please follow our transmission in internet, in the Internet News, Ukraine News, in Facebook, UCMC Facebook, Ukraine World, etc. So now I would like to turn the mic, to give the floor to Eduard. Eduard, can you hear us? And thank you very much. I really hear you clear and loud. So, Edward, we would like to ask you, well, actually, we know that the procedure of the exchange of prisoners, this is a kind of diplomatic process. Very often it's a kind of closed process, so to say. So we would like to ask you not so much about the exchange, but rather about what is being done by your ministry, the government of Ukraine, generally speaking, in order to have this issue of Ukrainian political prisoners in the agenda. First of all, our Western colleagues. How are you doing that? Thank you very much for your question. We can actually have a kind of, to break down the answer into two projects. Well, number one, we are talking about aspects, actually, not projects. The first one is a political one. Our foreign partners and how we keep on the attention of our foreign partners focused on this issue. We are doing that in different ways. We are talking, we include this issue by all means into the agenda. I'm talking about the plan of different consultations and different levels with our foreign partners. The issue of the Crimea, the issue of political prisoners, it's always in the focus of attention and is always reflected. And this information is being conveyed actively, not only just conveyed, We are not talking about the information for the sake of information. We are we are doing that in order. We are talking about our partners. We would like to have the specific response on their part, and this response can be different. Number one, for example, when they, in their contacts, during their contacts with the Russian Federation, let's say with the occupationist authorities in Donbass, they raise this issue. We are talking about the political pressure, so to say. Another aspect, when our diplomats abroad, our representatives, for instance, in the OSCE, in the Council of Europe, in the United Nations, also they actually raise this issue to be discussed. As they're in. For example, now in the United Nations, as you know, there is a traditional Human Rights Protection Resolution of the General Assembly, which is being passed annually. And during this period of time, specifically now, they are actually living through the preparation period of negotiations with different partners, etc., like last year and this year as well. You're talking about the text. Our goal is to ensure the full reflection of all this topic, of this issue, to full measure. And this is what pertains to the political aspect. Also, there is a practical aspect of that issue, dealing with the everyday work, so to say. And we have to realize very important aspect here. On the territory of the occupied Crimea, actually, we cannot provide those consulate, let's say, assistance because there is no consulate here. We believe this territory be our territory. And if you are talking about the consulate assistance, this is really limited because of the territory of the Russian Federation per se. Our consuls, consulate officers, they actually work very actively. I have some figures regarding the Crimea. This year, our consuls visited more than 400 times. They visited our compatriots who actually find themselves behind the bars in the Russian Federation, and out of this more than 400 cases, 75 we are talking about political prisoners. The last visit, the most recent visit, took place on the 22nd, 23rd September this year, when they visited 7 citizens of Ukraine whose health is really seriously damaged. We are in this kind of sophisticated aspects, a complex aspect. There is another aspect which is being actively used by us. We are talking about the means of the public and the citizens' diplomacy. And here we have the platform, international platform to liberate the political prisoners. This is an official, informal mechanism between the state authorities of the MFA Ukraine, the reintegration of the temporary occupied territories in Ukraine, etc. The office, the ombudsman's office, and the human rights protection organizations. We also communicate with the relatives, and we coordinate our efforts on the international arena in order to actually get the necessary response from all of them. This is one aspect. Another thing which we are actually working on now, we are preparing the draft document to introduce the public advocacy mentorship institute for the foreign citizens regarding the public journalists who are now imprisoned. So the objective of this project in order to involve the well-known names, well-known people, politicians, let's say the government officials, and different experts, writers, in order for them to exert their impact on the position, available position, if we're talking about the specific political prisoner. So for each foreign person, conventional speaking, he or she will have a specific Ukrainian political prisoner, and we believe that owing to this mechanism, we'll be able to reach the highest, the top level of publicity on the international arena, and actually and to cover, to embrace a bigger, let's say, audience or territory in order to share the real information with them. And we do hope that within the framework of all those efforts, in our opinion, the introduction of this kind of application and the prisoner's voice, this is really a very important, extremely important step, which is going to contribute to better understanding of this problem the world over. And actually MFA is prepared to get involved and to do everything possible in order to further expand the audience. We are to provide our, let's say, networks and our foreign facilities, let's say, or premises, in order to make the information about this project more better available to the local citizens. And this, I would like to end my input. Thank you very much. We had the Deputy General Director of the Department of MFA Ukraine, Edward, and we were talking about the diplomatic corps, what they are doing in order to improve the conditions of the political prisoners, and what they are doing in order to return our political prisoners back to Ukraine. Actually, we start our today's discussion with a short video actually telling about the special application of Prisoner's Voice. Once again, I would like to say that this is one of the cultural initiatives which actually is called upon at least to once again throw more light on the problem of the Ukrainian prisoners. And this actually application was transferred for another project whose objective was to bring more attention to this issue. We are talking first of all about the European audience, those people who actually are involved, the decision makers I'm talking about, are directly involved in this issue. But the idea, the initial idea, was somewhat transformed during this coronavirus crisis. Well, I'm not going to talk in much detail about our idea, but actually what we did, we transformed it from the offline to online mode. So the application of the augmented reality, the supplemented reality, was born, and we do hope that this will help us to actually to draw more attention to this very painful topic, very acute, high-profile issues, which the human psycho actually instinctively doesn't want to deal with. That's why we thought maybe using the modern up-to-date technologies will be able to do that. So we developed this kind of the augmented reality application, owing to which actually the former political prisoners like Sentsov, Balogh, Gorny could speak. We actually would like to wish good health to Mr. Balogh. We did not even suspect when we actually interviewed this person what we could not even think that we would be able, at least now, to communicate with him in not in reality, but in the kind of enhanced or augmented reality. We can say that there was a positive dynamics, gradually, slowly, but and gradually his health improves, and we wish him really good health. And again, if you're talking about this great information campaign, we actually took care of a number of the interviews with the relatives of the Kremlin prisoners, and we tried to disseminate this information as much as possible. in Ukraine and to the Western countries, to Europe, or into another or a pro-Ukraine world, which is actually aimed, whose objective is to have an opportunity to have the live discussion in English, for example, discussing the different Ukrainian problems in Ukraine. And this project won't be actually available if we didn't have the support on the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation. And I would like to ask Yulia Fediv, the executive director of this foundation, asking her to tell us how they support this, not only this initiative, but different other initiatives, which are not only kind of cultural initiatives, but in addition to some, let's say, other problems, including the political ones. How do you do that, actually? How do you help to resolve those? Thank you, Andriy. This is really painful to realize that in the 21st century we continue to talk about democratic values, about the freedom of speech. And I believe that the state, the government, in the person of the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation, it has to do whatever it can in order to support such important initiatives coming from the organization of the civil society, which makes it possible through cultural entities to give the opportunity to speak up their minds, especially to those people who will need that here in Ukraine and abroad. And our vision is that the culture and the clearness are very required for the mutual understanding and development. The cultural figures, cultural initiatives, creative industries, because the nanotechnologies actually enables us to use those instruments and those tools about which we could only dream about a decade ago. So I really appreciate, I thank you very much for this very important project, and I understand that the understanding or comprehension of culture increases. We are talking about the support given to the socially important topics like the Kremlin prisoners one. So I do hope that this application, which has been created with the support of the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation, will actually embrace a very wide audience and will bring the fruit which we actually strive for today, and hopefully within the shortest possible period of time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yulia. Actually, I would like to thank in your person to the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation. As you can see, this institution has become kind of, well, in a very positive meaning, very loud, so to say. And we hope that a lot of projects, another project will be supported by you. And we are talking about the great breakthrough in the cultural policy of Ukraine of late. And we do hope that a lot of, let's say, artists or figures of arts, those creative people, so to say, they will be inspired by this initiative and some other initiatives as well, and they will be able to come up with other creative ideas, which will help us to convey in a very non-standard way to the world outside Ukraine the problems which Ukraine is living through, encounters, in order for Ukraine to stay on the agenda, international agenda. And not only I'm talking about the resolution of the problems it faces today, but different stories about those misfortunes which we encounter in our life. This project, like many other initiatives, is well, hopefully this is going to be very successful. It is already successful owing to the efforts of the Initiative of the Public Freedoms. This is one of the organizations which deal with the victims of different conflicts, and now they actually deal with the political prisoners in the temporarily occupied territories in the Russian Federation. We have Oleksandra Matviychuk. Our project, which we actually carried out to get, what we did with the augmented reality application, was actually supplemented by the Alexander's initiative. When we met, actually, we started to think that we actually, using synergy, we can actually supplement the efforts of each other, complement the efforts of each other. So I would like to give the floor to Oleksandra, and I would like to ask her, first of all, how the public organization work with the problems of Ukrainian prisoners, what kind of instruments they use, I mean efficient instruments, which actually prove their efficiency. Because all of us, we actually strive to achieve the ultimate goal, to return all the political prisoners back to their motherland. But this is a highly ambitious objective, and before we actually reach that, we have other tasks. We should not forget about those as well, and talk about those. So you have the floor.
Center of civil liberties from the start of occupation of Crimea by Russia, and after the start of military actions in Donbass, we started to deal with the issues of prisoners of war, and we have three categories of people in this. First, people who are behind bars for political reasons in Russia and in the occupied Crimea. We call them political prisoners. And on our list, we have 100 people of this category. Second category are people who are behind bars based on fabricated convictions. These are these are prisoners and civilians, and humanitarian law should be applied to them, but they are in bad conditions, and we have seen reporting isolation, a secret prison about torture and killings that are going on during 7 years. And the third category are people who are behind bars in the Russian Federation. They are citizens of Ukraine, and they are because of fabricated cases. This is without political reasons, but these people are innocent. And Oleg Chaban, he is a bus driver, he is behind bars, and we have several thousands of people like that. So Russian Federation and occupation power in the occupied territory of Ukraine, they constantly put behind bars new prisoners, and we should speak about 3 reasons. First, these people are used as weapons in information war, and Russian Federation, they are trying to show on TV, they want to show subversive elements to form this image of enemy. And in 2014, we saw these terrible kidnappings, torture, and killings. And it started with the Rishat Ametov case, killing of Gorlovka deputy Volodymyr Rybak. They started to squeeze out from the region activists, and they tried to establish control of the region. And the third thing, the third reason, Russian Federation uses people as a means to reach their political goals, to blackmail Ukraine. That's why we need to release the main witness in MH17 case, and also Berkut officers. They didn't relate to war at all. After Sentsov was released, we changed the name. So we have 2 important functions in these campaigns. They provide opportunity for people to join. People, organizations, they may contribute to the release of prisoners of Kremlin, and also they help to keep this issue on the agenda. We have great competition in the world, and this issue, in order that someone do something about it, we should constantly speak about this issue. And together with Internews, we promote this petition. It is addressed to the international organizations and foreign governments, not to abstract Putin. What demands what should be done in order not just to release the prisoners that are in the Russian prisons in Russia, in Crimea, in Donbass. They should have the opportunity to live until this moment of release. They should not be tortured. They should be provided with a lawyer. They should have visits from their relatives, and they should be provided with medical help in this time of COVID. And you may join this campaign, and you saw this 3 steps. It is easy to join. You may find on the internet prisoners' voice petition through Internews or Center for Political Liberties website. This will take several minutes of your time. You may download this application, and you may write about these stories on social media, and you may become a volunteer of our campaign. We carry out some actions. You may join, and I would like to say that many people, they just understand the situation, they try to figure out what is going on, and they say, we cannot do anything about it. Now we cannot change this situation drastically, but we should put our efforts. Without us, nothing will change. Thank you, Oleksandra. Thank you for your energy, for your initiatives. I would like to remind that Internews-Ukraine and Center for Civil Liberties, we got united in the framework of this project. And we understood that only by joint efforts, we will be able to reach those goals that we have. In the world, they shouldn't forget about the war in Ukraine and about the victims of this war. Political prisoners who are in prisons in Russia and in the occupied territories. Our citizens, they are in the territory of Russia, or in the territories Russia believes as theirs, and we should cooperate with those islands of civil society that are in Russia. And we have Serhiy Davidis. He's the head of the program for support for political prisoners, Memorial organization. Maybe Ukrainians know about this organization because they have many years of history concerning rehabilitation of political prisoners, not only prisoners of this regime, but also of previous regimes. Serhiy, do you hear us? Yes, I hear you. Good afternoon. Serhiy, we know that your organization can mention such a notion as political persecutions and people who serve their sentences and they have the status of political prisoners. This provides an opportunity to get this attention to these people and provide the opportunity for international and diplomatic pressure on repressive regimes, repressive machines and institutions and people. And what is the algorithm of the status, how you work? And I would like to ask you about coronavirus crisis and how it reflects on political prisoners and what we can do in order to improve conditions for them. You're right, Memorial Human Rights Protection Center for more than 10 years deals with political prisoners, those people who are persecuted by Russian power, and they are deprived of liberty by Russian power, no matter what their citizenship is. This is the responsibility of Russian power to treat them properly. And we use resolution of the Council of Europe and the interpretation of this resolution that was adopted by human rights activists in Russia and Ukraine, and Oleksandra participated in this work. And we should include those people who are persecuted exclusively for for trying to implement their rights, or because of their religious beliefs, or those who are persecuted because of political reasons, with evident violations of criminal proceedings envisaged by international conventions, or speaking about political motives of the power, there are two key options we see. Oleksandra mentioned about it. This is stop of the activity, legal actions of people, and often this is about journalists, activists, opposition politicians. If we are speaking about persecutions inside Russia, the goal is simple: is to stop activity that is not liked by power.
Another well-known component of this motive, we all understand that just to preserve the subjective and authoritative authorities, if we are talking about persecution of the local population, the indigenous population, Crimean Tatars, and Oleksandra was talking about that. This is aimed, first of all, to intimidate the society, number one. Number two, to form a certain picture of the world with the help of demonstrating such kind of persecutions. If you're talking about the Crimean Tatars, this is the most persecuted ethnic group which is persecuted by the Russian authorities. What I'm talking about, the share of those people in the general number of the people persecuted. So to suppress the social activity of the Crimean Tatars, to suppress the social solidarity movement, and on the other hand, to demonstrate to the Russian society and other citizens of the Crimea, some kind of heroic, so to say, essence of the activities of the Crimean Tatar activists. And this is a very vivid example of that. Generally speaking, since we visualize our task in order to provide the maximum possible proof to the Russian society and the international community what is being done, which doesn't correspond with the criteria actually fixed in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Our list includes 66 persons, citizens of Ukraine, citizens of the Crimea. Of course, the general number of those people is much bigger, but we include those people in our list after we have already the well-based arguments. We are talking about the criticism of the criminal prosecution in each specific case. So we are kind of lagging behind a bit, but this doesn't mean that any cases which have all the signs of political persecution, we discard those. No, it just takes more time. But speaking of what you asked about the corona crisis, well, yesterday, unfortunately, again, there was another closure of the Russian humanitarian facilities. Well, generally speaking, the conditions are very poor there, and I'm talking not only about the political prisoners and those who have been actually charged and actually accused on a legitimate basis. But the situation is, when this epidemic situation aggravates, they close all those facilities from any actual opportunity to get any information, which actually makes our effort rather difficult. A very good way out of this situation would be to actually set free those people who are held there, and this doesn't depend only on the situation associated with coronavirus. So we have to pool the efforts, including the Russian Federation society. Maybe sometimes it's not really visible, clearly visible, sometimes, and those people who actually condemn the repressions against Ukrainian citizens of the international society and Ukrainian society. Only by pooling our efforts we can actually achieve some success in that. Thank you, Serhiy. Thank you for your support. We do hope that we are going to continue our cooperation, but we would like to cooperate on some other issues, let's say some cultural initiatives instead of what we are doing now, historical initiatives. We would like not to actively work on the issues of liberating our citizens, so that there is no need to do that, what I'm talking about. So thank you very much for your support, for the fact that on the national level you try to give the status of political prisoners to those people, and by doing that actively lobby the issue of their liberation and to improve the conditions of their stay there. I would like to remind you that we heard Serhiy Davidis, who is a member of the Council of the Center of Memorial in Russia, organization which one of the few that help Ukrainian prisoners in Russia. By the way, Serhiy mentioned a few minutes ago that the Crimean Tatars are most persecuted group of group in Russia. So I would like to ask Alim Aliyev, who is Deputy General Director of the Ukrainian Institute. There is another Ukrainian governmental institution which actually whose task is to further develop, to make the voice of Ukraine heard better in the world over in different aspects I'm talking about. Alim, we know that you travel a lot around the world and tell the people about the Crimean Tatars, about the occupied territories, about the problems of persecution of the Crimean Tatar activists, and how actually we can really make the whole world listen and hear what we are talking about, so that they can remember about this problem and maybe to provide some help to us. Thank you, Andriy. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for coming here to participate in this very important, in my opinion, event. Sometimes some people in the Crimea tell me to talk less about the Crimea. Well, in my opinion, a very subjective view of that. But fortunately, they start to talk more about the Crimea of late. I would like to address my colleagues. I would even say my friends. We have been we know each other for more than 1 year, and very often we actually meet dealing with different issues of this kind. Freedom and dignity for the authoritarian regimes is one of the most dangerous, let's say, threat. So, if we take into consideration the background of the political prisoners, who they are, their biographies, personal histories, we can see the teachers, the historians, doctors, the public activists. Let's say people who actually like Ukraine, who actually feel the consequence of this repression mechanism, machine. But despite that fact that a lot of the cultural, educational, media initiatives or children targeted initiatives are still there in Crimea, which gratifies my heart realizing that. Actually, at the Ukrainian Institute, we actually now introduce the civil society activities, and one of the tangible share of our work will be the Crimea, because the voices of the free Crimea, free people of the Crimea, the voice of the political prisoners must be better heard through the media initiatives, through the cultural, academic, let's say, and the civil initiatives the world over. May you know that this year they declared about the creation of the International Crimean Platform, which would actually gather, I would say, the friends of Ukraine representatives of different countries who, on the political level, diplomatic level, including the soft power platform, not only they would actually return or raise the issue of the Crimea and include that into the international agenda, but also would elaborate on the mechanism of deoccupation of the peninsula, Crimean peninsula, because it's very important for us to do our homework and not to wait for everybody to come with a ready, let's say, solution of those issues. We have to propose to our partners our own solution, and actually the solution of this kind regarding Crimean platform is there. In the Ukrainian Institute, we are working to create now some of the artistic, scientific projects which would be related not only to the topic of the Crimea, but also to the theme of the political prisoners. Thank you, Alim. May I remind you that the majority of the political prisoners who find themselves behind the bars and the jails in Russian Federation, they are Crimean Tatars. As our colleague from the Russian Federation mentioned, that they are systematically persecuted by the Russian authority. Yesterday, unfortunately, we remembered once again about the history of political prisoners and this awful prohibition of the Vakhtang Kipian book about Vassilis Tus. We actually we remembered how it happened and what happens now in our today's reality. We have the Stanislav Aseev, the Ukrainian journalist, who believed his duty to stay in the occupied Donetsk as a blogger, as a journalist, to inform us what is going there. He was actually captured and abducted by the militants. He was charged with espionage, and he was sentenced to 15 years of imprisonment. But the so-called prosecutor's office, he spent 2.5 years in captivity, and he was fortunate to come back to Ukraine. Stanislav, we are really happy to see you here with us. We know that you can tell us a bit about the so-called clandestine, let's say, the secret colonies and camps and prisons in Russia. What happens there? Actually, not in Russia, but on the occupied territory of Donbass. Well, speaking about Russia, I have different information about this issue. First of all, I would like to say that, speaking from my experience, I can definitely tell you when you find yourself in captivity and you have an opportunity to hear what is going on, you are talking about the liberation of the prisoners, actually listen to each word of that, what's going on. But unfortunately, I can tell today that in this specific issue, find ourselves in the blind alley, actually, in the cul-de-sac, because nothing is being done, because our list of the prisoners which we would like to liberate and bring back to Ukrainian territory from Donbass, occupied territory, these satellites, the so-called the Donetsk People Republic, they actually did not take in, the list from the OSCE, as they say, another party. Honestly speaking, the Russian Federation actually ordered not even to consider that list. This number one. Number two, proceeding from the above said, we do not have the list for the exchange provided by the combatants or militants, let's say, those people who they want to bring back to their territory. That this issue is not being considered even because of political conditions in the Russian Federation. You know this notorious resolution of the parliament and some other demands of the Russian Federation. I'm talking about, actually, we would be fortunate if next exchange takes place this year. Still. And another point, a very negative tendency today when the authorities start to see in the prisoners who are still in the captivity, some kind of the enemies, because of course they raise this issue all the time. They are talking about the surnames of their relatives who are staying in the captivity. But when you name this or another prisoner, you actually, the authorities say, they actually increase the value or the price for those prisoners, and I can confirm that, because when I was in the camp 32, well, and then Daria Morozova, who is the ombudsman, so-called ombudsman of that republic, so-called republic, she called us the political commodity. So when our authorities said that when we give the names of those people, we increase their price, so to say, and this is the absurd thing. Me, Mr. Sentsov, and other well-known prisoners, actually, we can be here and talk about that because they constantly mention our names. Otherwise, we will still be in the basements of those in the captivity. Those people who want themselves in those basements, of course, I would not name they give the name of the person, because maybe we can actually bring the person back based on this or not conditions. But if a person actually missed 3 or 4 different exchange opportunities, and somebody tell to their relatives, do not give the name of your son or your relative, this is absurd. I know a lot of people, because I shared, let's say, the prisoners' cells with them. I do not support the idea that we should not talk about them, because those people actually were working for our state. You won't hear their names, you won't see their relatives on some public events, but those people are still prisoners. And the fact that nobody knows them publicly, when they do not know them publicly, this doesn't help to liberate them. So I do not agree that we should not talk publicly about those people. And then the third point I would like to mention here, what is the specifics of staying in the occupied territory in Donbass. The specifics is that there is a practice of systematic tortures while in the Russian Federation and the occupied Crimea, when the people are behind the bars. Of course, I cannot provide some objective statistics, but let's say when there are 20 people out of 100 people are subjected to tortures, but in Donbass only 10 out of 100 are not subjected to the tortures. And I can talk about some concentration camp of Russian Federation. In that such camp, not even 10 people are not subjected to tortures. So the person is really lucky if was not, let's say, beaten, or let's say battered, let's say, and I can tell you that dozens of people were imprisoned in shared the cell with me. So we are talking about systematic tortures. It's not that for the first day of your imprisonment they would torture you. No. There are people who actually served already a year and a half, or 2 years, and who already had been sentenced. They continued to torture them. You can't even imagine what people are subjected to over there. When you address the Russian Federation, the temporarily occupied territories, whatever I say or other people say, nobody believes them. But when you start to tell what happened even in our territory, with the people of the pro-Ukrainian position, what happened to them, they cannot even believe what happens in the center of Donetsk when some people are, let's say, secured to the chairs with the adhesive tape, and, for example, those people will come back in several hours after that, or even the next day, or several days, and you see the bad burns on their skin as the signs of the tortures, and this doesn't exhaust the methods of torture they use. I have to say that they're the kind of the isolation, so to say, place. And this is, let's say, I'm not talking specifically about the Donetsk People's Republic, because specifically because in Lugansk, so-called Lugansk People's Republic, they have their own methods. of torture. I personally spent 28 months in the cell, and we are using some kind of general phrases about when it happens, but we should not forget that people are subjected to awful conditions. I'm not talking about everyday conditions, you know. If you're talking about isolation, they may be better, much better than in the, let's say, detention center. But then when I was in the detention center, this kind of resort places compared to what we were, because when you are isolated, maybe you're not tortured, but 3 meters from your cell, you can hear the shouts and the outcries of the people who are being tortured, and your psychic or mental health is badly damaged when you hear those sounds. And again, for example, the first months of my imprisonment I spent in the basement. If you compare the basement, the previous basement, I found myself in the building of the so-called ministry. Again, this kind of the health center. But anyway, basement is a basement. Awful conditions, but again, the most important is the systemic nature of the tortures, and for some reason our authorities do not want to raise this issue in order to, I'm talking about the at least to show publicly those torturers who should be brought to responsibility. And actually we cannot even talk about any kind of amnesty to be applied to those people. Okay, speaking about those absolutely inhuman conditions you found themselves, where you actually drew the strengths. Well, you know, answering this question sometimes uses some kind of lyricism, but this is the issue of your life. Because you have to ask yourself whether you're going to continue to live on or not. Because when you face the issue of being raped, I'm talking about the males even, but we have to think what have to do. Maybe sometimes even some people even thinking about suicides. And this is the thought of everyone who finds themselves in the basement. Actually, I had my beloved persons. I wanted to see her again sometime. But some people which I found there, they told me that they were living only for to revenge later. They want just to survive and to tell some people about what was going on. Not even they were, some people we're not talking about physical revenge, but you know, because it's almost impossible to read those people who torture them. But we have to take that into consideration, because some of the officers, they said that they did not care, they didn't care shit, excuse my language, for what other people were thinking about them. But so we have to take that into consideration. Thank you. Stanislav, I don't know really how to let's say, to live with that information, but we have to do everything possible in order to bring the people, to take them out of those awful conditions as soon as possible. Stanislav was talking about the relatives, the near and dear, those who remain the mouthpiece of the prisoners. This is actually the title of our petition and the project, Prisoner's Voice. We have Lyudmila Shumkova on the Skype. Lyudmila, can you hear us? Do we have Lyudmila online? Hello? Lyudmila, we can actually see you. Do you read us? Can you hear us? Perhaps there are some technical problems. I would kindly ask our sound engineers try to establish the connection. Lyudmila Shumkova is an aunt of Oleksandra Shumkov, a Ukrainian public activist, a serviceman. He was actually sentenced in Bryansk region in Russia to 4 years of imprisonment for his activity against the interests of Russia. Actually, we wanted to talk with Lyudmila about certain problems faced by the relatives of the prisoners about maybe there is some support given to their families, to their relatives. Can we have Lyudmila online now? Okay. So while we are trying to make contact with Lyudmila, I would like to ask to address my question to the audience present here, or maybe those who are listening us in online. May I remind you that we have on the Facebook page Ukrainian UCMC, Ukrainian Critical Crisis Media Center, in Ukrainian, and in the web page Ukraine World in English, whether there are some questions to be addressed to any of our participants here, both in online and I'm talking about the audience present here. Oleksandra actually had to leave us for some time to a neighboring room because she's been involved in some of the discussions regarding the Ukrainian prisoners, and Mr. Aliyev also had to leave us. But we still have Stanislav. We have Yulia Fediv, the Executive Director of Ukrainian Cultural Foundation. Maybe there are some questions. Dear friends, should you have any questions, please raise your hand and introduce them yourselves. Until you are thinking about your questions, we have the questions in stream in the Facebook Internews. One of the listeners asks, how can we help if we do not know even the number of the political prisoners, as was mentioned by Oleksandra, who we should help, actually? I believe those who know the answer to this question can share this with us. Well, I believe that, first of all, we need to actively communicate, if not with the governmental authorities, but at least with the public organizations or NGOs, which are directly involved in dealing with those issues, who take count of the victims and the prisoners. And also NGOs, actually, they cooperate with the governmental authorities, with the security service and the profile ministers, who actually take care of the, let's say, negotiations about the exchange. The information, if not public, it still is being exchanged between different institutions dealing with those issues. And the most important, should there be any facts which you believe to be unknown, if you know the names which you believe to be unknown, you have to inform us about those. And once again, I repeat myself, if you would like, if you do not want to address the authorities, you can actually address NGOs, the Center of the Citizens Freedoms. So my question to Stanislav at this point of time. What do you think? What else Ukraine can do? You're talking about some international pressure to be exerted in order to resolve this issue, or try to resolve that, because we cannot do our all by ourselves. Maybe there is some what we can do. It's not enough, and we need support of some other institutions. What else we can do? What institutions should we approach? Maybe there are some, well, let's say, informal negotiations, international negotiations. Maybe we can talk about some voices of the international leaders which can change the situation. With your permission, I would like to respond to the previous question, because there is another absurd situation here. The matter is that this question should not be addressed in our state, because the people are actually find themselves in a different territory, and we cannot establish what is what there. And represents so the militants, they do something like that. Well, I'm not given to give you specific names for ethical reasons, but there is a specific case. For example, I shared this cell in the basement with a certain person for some time. And I was witness when this person suffered let's say when they broke the ribs of that person. Sometime later, there were negotiations between the Ukrainian party and the let's say rebels. And when we were talking about the health situation, they give the answer. I mean, the rebels they give the answer that they do not know. Maybe there is a missing in action, whatever, or they being wanted, so to say. And I know several years passed when I shared that cell, and we knew for sure that that person was there. But the question is not who is there, but rather to confirm those names who know for sure that those people are there. As regards the support on the part of the government, we are talking about isolation per se. Such thing must be known to the whole world. People have to understand that the prisoners in the next Donbass area, they're not just sitting there, they're being subjected constantly, permanently to different humiliation and tortures. I'm sure that every day they're being tortured, because I saw that myself with my own eyes. So such issues should be actually investigated by our law enforcement bodies, and to continuously raise this issue on the international area, but so that there are no efforts to make this issue of the prisoners over there well known. So we are not doing enough for the European leaders or the Western leaders in the wider sense of that. The people are not just imprisoned, they are being subjected to humiliation and the tortures by the Russian Federation. Sucks, And there is a question from the UCMC, a rhetorical question. Don't you think that the history with the liberation of the prisoners, political prisoners, turns into some kind of the endless process, because a lot of people go to the temporarily occupied territory, to the Russia, because they have relatives there? How can we actually break this vicious circle? What you can actually offer, what can be done to put the end to this story? Speaking about the people going over there, well, actually, I would not recommend to take this risk, because especially if you have some pro-Ukrainian views or you have some business in that territory. You already find yourselves in the group of risk. You can find yourselves in the basement I described previously, because you just visited that place. Believe my experience, this it's nothing for them just to let's say to take prisoners and just to turn the people into the commodities, like Daria mentioned. I already mentioned that. But we cannot just stop, close let's say, those outposts between the territories. This will not help to diminish or decrease the number of the prisoners there, because they actually capture every day different people and throw them into the basements. But actually, this must be brought to the level of the government and to the international level, if you will. Thank you. I believe we have contact with Ludmila now. Can you hear us now? Yes. Good afternoon. I can hear you. Well, actually, we already mentioned that you are aunt of Oleksandra Shumkov, who is a prisoner who was sentenced to 4 years of imprisonment for allegedly for the activities aimed against the interests of Russia. So can you please tell us about what do you do in order to try to liberate Oleksandra? And is there any support to such families like yours?
So I think you mean the support from the state, maybe from NGOs as well. We have some support, but we constantly face some difficulties, and we are trying to resolve these difficulties on our own, including the issues of financing of the work of lawyers in Russia, Russian lawyers. Now we think that everything will be okay, and on the 24th of December, the term of illegal detention of Oleksandra is going to end. And we hope that there won't be any attempts from Russian Federation to detain him longer. And we hope that the Russian Federation will release him. We are waiting for this event. About what I wanted to say, it is difficult to monitor those events that are ongoing there. During his illegal detention, he was held in isolation or in a cell in strict condition of detention. But in accordance with his conviction of the court can sentence him to general regime, but during the whole period of detention, his rights were limited, and the Tarshuk officials, the officials of prison, they increased the punishment for him. Even Russian court recognized that his conditions were really grave, and the court canceled those decisions, and the Court of Appeal even recognized that those decisions taken in prison against him were wrong. It is difficult to follow the events because he has limited connection with us. This is only by email or when we have visits of his lawyer there. About the visits, the lawyer cannot go there to monitor what is going on with him there, because these are financial issues. During all these 3 years, we have very limited resources to pay for lawyers' services. We addressed Memorial organization. We asked them for support, and they provided a financial support for us. At the stage of appeal, they paid for some lawyers' visits to colony. And about our state, financial support is limited. Starting 2018, families started to get 100,000, but not all the families. We got such an assistance, but we have to support our prisoner in order to help him to preserve his health. So to provide some parcels, some newspapers, in order that he gets information about what is going on outside the colony. So these are magazines and newspapers, parcels, money to his account, and the state does not pay for all the services of lawyers, and only court hearings attended by lawyers. The state provide money only for these procedures, and maybe some rights of the prisoner are violated, and this should be recorded in order to address to court instances in Russia. If Russia does not recognize this, then to European Court of Human Rights, and this financial resources are needed, and the state should support us, and agreements should be concluded with the lawyers in order that they are able to record violations that are going on in prison. Thank you, Lyudmila. We hope that with these interventions, by reminding about this, we will be able to gradually help to raise these issues of provision of lawyers' help, and the state should provide for this, and funds and institutions also should provide for this. Lyudmila Shumkova was with us, and she is an aunt of Mr. Oleksandra Shumkov, who is in prison in Russia. We thank you, and we hope that he will be released, and we are waiting for the moment of his release. One more question to Stanislav. 1 minute, please. Facebook Internews. Stanislav, and what is the main reason of systemic torture and hatred? Maybe this is impunity. People believe that they won't be punished for this. Of course, they believe that there will be impunity for them. And I was tortured not in isolation, but at the Ministry of State Security. And there, I always say that people, they do not get satisfaction from this. They tortured me first day, and then I spent 1.5 months in the basement. Then I came to isolation, and there people get satisfaction from torture. Person signs everything, and the person is sentenced, but they continue to torture them because they believe they are guards, and they just get satisfaction from this. Maybe they were gathered in isolation especially for this, and the administration of isolation, they are classic psychopaths and sadists. Formally, they are also war criminals. I am sure that they get satisfaction from this. They get satisfaction from their minor and at the same time comprehensive power over those people who are in this basement. So also a question of to specialists on what is the situation with the COVID in these prisoners. Maybe someone caught the virus and get ill. Maybe our colleagues from Memorial and Center for Political Liberties, maybe they know this about this. We do not have statistics about this. And this petition, we included in this campaign Prisoner's Voice and to our augmented reality application. This petition is to improve conditions, taking into account the situation with COVID, because cells are overcrowded, no proper ventilation is in place, and no masks, they are unavailable, no hygiene, no washing hands and social distancing. That's why this petition should become a voice. Despite all other threats that are in prison, there is also a situation with COVID-19, and we want to improve conditions concerning this. And dear colleagues, we are going to end our press conference. I would like to thank our participant, Stanislav Aseev, who told us about inhumane conditions For a long time, there was an intellectual and philosophical discussion that any experience of the person adds better understanding of human nature. And after terrible things that happened during the Second World War, many people who were in death camps, humanitarians, philosophers, intellectuals, they started to say that this thought that every experience provides better understanding of human nature, that this thought is fake, because there are inhumane things that contradict human nature, and we should understand that there is such an experience, and we should get rid of it as soon as possible, and we should liberate prisoners, and we should do everything possible in order to stop this, because in the 21st century, we believe that we are at the top of human civilization, and these things, they should not happen. So we thank all those who joined us, and we thank Lyudmila Shymkova. She is aunt of Mr. Shymkov, who is now in prison, and Alim Aliyev, we thank him. Also, we thank Serhiy Davidis from Memorial organization, Oleksandra, Matviychuk from Center of Civil Liberty for Civil Liberties, Yulia, Fediv, Executive Director of the Ukrainian Cultural Fund that supports different cultural initiatives, including Prisoners' Voice Project and application, augmented reality application. Andriy Kulakov, Deputy General Director of Political Directorate of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, and we thank the ministry that carries out diplomatic negotiations and different campaigns in order to provide proper attention to the issue of political prisoners, in order that this issue remains on the agenda, and also to provide this information to decision makers who influence the decisions at the international level, and we all may become a voice of the prisoners in order to improve their conditions, and as the end aim, we should help in their release, and we hope that they will be able to return to Ukraine. Please download Prisoner's Voice application. You may find this on Android platform, and it will appear in iOS these days, and you will be able to listen, to read the stories of families, and you will be able to sign a petition, and you will be able to spread this information further, and you will become ambassadors. You will become a real voice of our compatriots who are now suffering, and we are able now to tell about them to the world. Thank you very much, and we all hope that this day will come soon when our compatriots will return back to our homeland.